In the high-stakes shooter like Counter-Strike, we've developed a collective, twitchy habit. You fire a short burst from your rifle, and when you think it's safe, your finger instinctively finds the R key. It doesn't matter if you fired 2 bullets or 12. It doesn't matter if you're holding an AK with a 30-round mag or a sniper that only loads 5. The moment the number dips below its maximum, something in your brain whispers, "Fix it." It's a reflex. It's a security blanket. We've been conditioned to believe that anything less than a full magazine is a magazine that is failing us. For decades, the reload has been a consequence-free action. It was a brief pause in the rhythm of combat, a momentary vulnerability that resulted in a magical replenishment. But recently, Counter-Strike 2 did something that sent a shiver down the spine of every tactical reloader in the community. They turned the reload into a sacrifice. Today, we're going to explore the psychology of the full mag compulsion, the anxiety loops, cognitive biases, and behavioral conditioning that make us reach for that reload key even when we don't need to, and how Counter-Strike's shift toward magazine-based economics is dismantling one of the oldest safety nets in gaming to create a higher-stakes, more intentional form of mastery. To understand why the CS2 update is so disruptive, we have to look at what I call the infinite reservoir fallacy. In most shooters, your ammo isn't stored in magazines. It's stored in a nebulous, magical pool. When you reload, the game's math simply subtracts what you need from the total and tops you off. The gun in your hands is a prop, the magazine is a meter, and meters, our brains are wired to want full. It's a system built on zero-friction design. There is no penalty for reloading after every burst, aside from the animation time. This creates a gameplay loop where the player is never forced to live with the consequences of their wastefulness. And because there are no consequences, the behavior gets reinforced. Every time you reload and survive the next fight, your brain logs that as a success. That's operant conditioning at work. A variable reward loop that quietly trains you to associate reloading with safety and an incomplete magazine with danger. Think back to the time when you were 1 or 2 bullets short from winning an encounter against an enemy and how that made you feel. Bet you wish you had a full magazine then. The R key became a reset button for anxiety. We don't reload because we need a full magazine to kill the next enemy. We reload because a number below its maximum represents an incomplete task. In psychology, this is closely linked to the Zeigarnik Effect, the tendency for the brain to fixate on uncompleted or interrupted tasks far more than completed ones. Bartenders remember unpaid tabs, students obsess over the one exam they haven't finished, and gamers can't stop staring at a magazine that's sitting at 80% capacity. But the Zeigarnik Effect is only part of the story. There's also loss aversion, the psychological principle, formalized by Kahneman and Tversky, that losses feel roughly twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. When you look at a partially spent magazine, your brain isn't calculating whether you have enough bullets. It's grieving the ones that are already gone. The missing rounds feel like a wound. Reloading is the bandage. And underneath all of this is a subtler force, intolerance of uncertainty. Anxiety researchers describe this as the tendency to find ambiguity more distressing than a known bad outcome. A full magazine is certain. A partial magazine is a question mark. How many enemies are left? Will I need every round? I don't know. And that not knowing is unbearable. So we reload. We buy certainty with a key press, and it costs us nothing. Until CS2 decided it should. The recent CS2 update changes the fundamental verb of reloading. Now, when you drop a magazine, you aren't just starting a timer, you are discarding a resource. If you have 20 bullets left and you hit R, those 20 bullets are gone. They don't teleport back into your pocket. This shifts the game design from stat management to resource management. Every weapon now has its own physical magazine count, and the number varies. A rifle might give you 3, a precision weapon might give you fewer. The exact number isn't the point. The point is that it's finite, it's visible, and discarding one is permanent. Valve is forcing a genuine cost-benefit analysis into every microsecond of downtime, something the human brain is spectacularly bad at performing under stress. In my opinion, this change isn't just a balance tweak, it's behavioral engineering. It's the game designer stepping in and weaponizing the very psychological loops that zero-friction design spent decades creating. The compulsion to reload was trained into you by thousands of hours of consequence-free repetition. Now that same compulsion becomes the mechanism of your own downfall. It's a trap built entirely out of your own habits. There's a term in behavioral psychology for this: an anxiety-driven compulsion loop. The incomplete magazine creates discomfort. The reload relieves it. Relief reinforces the behavior. The behavior becomes automatic. In a world with no cost, that loop is harmless. In CS2's new system, that loop is a resource leak, and the game is quietly auditing every one of them. In the old system, a bad reload was only bad if you got caught during the animation. There's literally an achievement for it. It was a timing error. In the new system, a bad reload is a possible failure that leaves you without bullets. It's a strategic error that affects the rest of the round, unless, of course, you're using one of the single reload shotguns, which work exactly the same. Other games have played with this before. Helldivers 2 and Insurgency, Sandstorm are famous for it, but seeing it in a pillar of the balanced esports world like CS2 is quite a shift. It redefines what failure looks like. The old failure was that you were dying because you were greedy for a full mag, but new failure is you living, but being forced to fight the final 1v1 with a Glock because you threw your rifle's ammo on the ground. On that note, I wonder if Valve will play around with this mechanic and you could pick up discarded magazines and slot them into your weapon? Or what if they take the ready or not approach and you can keep your half-empty magazines for later use instead? This teaches the player a profound psychological lesson. Efficiency is a form of armor. The game rewards the cold player, the one who can look at a partial magazine and say, "That is enough," rather than the hot player who needs the comfort of a full chamber to feel safe. This maps almost perfectly onto what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to sit with discomfort without immediately acting to relieve it. It's a core skill in cognitive behavioral therapy, and it turns out it's also a core skill in staying alive in a late round 1v2. The players who master CS2's new economy aren't just learning ammo management, they're learning to regulate their own nervous systems under pressure. They're learning that the urge to act is not the same as the need to act. But here's what's fascinating. The magazine isn't the only place CS2 demands distress tolerance. The game has always been a masterclass in it. The new economy just makes it impossible to ignore. Think about holding an angle. You're crouched in a corner, you've heard a footstep, and every instinct in your body is screaming at you to peek, to act, to resolve the uncertainty. That's intolerance of uncertainty, firing at full volume. The disciplined player doesn't peek, they breathe, they wait. They understand that the discomfort of not knowing is less dangerous than the cost of acting impulsively. That is distress tolerance expressed as a decision about crosshair placement. Think about the buy phase when your economy is in ruins. You have enough for armor or a rifle, not both. Every part of you wants to feel protected, to feel ready, so you buy the rifle. You go in naked. You tolerate the vulnerability because you've calculated that firepower matters more than comfort. The player who buys the vest because it makes them feel safer, even when it doesn't strategically make sense, is letting their distress intolerance spend their money for them. Think about the bomb plant. You're the last alive, the site is yours, you've planted, and now you have to sit in a corner and wait while the timer ticks down. You can hear footsteps. You don't know if they're real or if your brain is manufacturing them out of pure anxiety. The urge to move, to reposition, to do something is almost unbearable. But movement creates sound. Sound gives you away. The winning play is to sit completely still and tolerate the dread. It's one of the most psychologically demanding things a game can ask of a player, and it requires the exact same neural machinery as sitting in a therapist's office and choosing not to flee from a difficult emotion. The magazine update simply makes distress tolerance economically visible. Before, you could feel the anxiety of an incomplete mag and immediately, cheaply resolve it. Now the game is saying, feel it, measure it, and decide whether acting on it is actually worth the cost. That gap, between feeling the urge and choosing whether to act, is where all of CS2's highest level decision-making lives. And it's the same gap that separates reactive players from composed ones, in every game, in every round, at every rank. So why does this change feel so heavy? Because it mirrors the friction of the real world. In life, we rarely get to top off our resources without discarding what we've already invested. By removing the magic pockets of the game, developers are making the digital world of Counter-Strike feel more authentic and grounded. They are asking us to sit with the discomfort of the almost full and find confidence in our own precision rather than the size of our reserves. The R key is no longer your weighted blanket that you press every time you feel safe and need a pick-me-up. It's a high-stakes gamble. And in that gamble, the game becomes less about who has the fastest twitch and more about who has the strongest mental discipline. It turns a shooter into a study of human restraint. I want to know, what's the most painful, accidental reload you've ever performed? Did it cost you the match? And more importantly, did you even realize you were doing it out of anxiety rather than necessity? Because that's the real question this update is forcing us to ask. Let me know in the comments. I'm Eurus, and I'm going to go unbind my R key for a few hours just to see if I can survive the anxiety.